we've also have the Sherrone Moore stuff, which we kind of got into a little bit with in the pre-show, and then we've also got a little Army Navy recap. So with that, we're going to start with the Sherrone Moore firing. Um, Sherrone Moore relieved of his duties as the Michigan football head coach. It's drenched with scandal, uh, a staffer inappropriate relations. Then staffer outs him, and he kind of goes haywire. He's got, ugly situation, super ugly situation. You hate to see this as a leader of a program, and I'm sure Sherrone Moore, giving him the benefit of the doubt, he's not the worst human being, but this is not a great moment. And I hope in a couple of years, maybe he has more some of a Lane Kiffin type, turnaround. But yeah, not good right now, not good at all. But honestly, for the school of Michigan, they don't have to pay a buyout of a coach they were probably going to fire anyway. And they have some intriguing head coaching names up for this job. The one I want to start with, and you guys can give your thoughts on the whole situation, but the one I want to start with is somebody that Luke mentioned on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. And I also think Sam mentioned this, but Clark Lee at Vanderbilt.
I mean, I think that the only issue with this is Barkley just signed an extension with Vandy, and they also flipped a really highly touted quarterback prospect. But that's like a 1 year. Um, like I think zooming out, that's not going to affect a decision by Lee whether he goes or stays in Vandy. But I just think naturally it's a perfect fit. If you look at the way that Clark Lee's built up Vandy and it's another school that has a pretty strong culture of physicality and defense. And you can tell the intentionality that went behind how they built that team, how they approach O line play. We've talked before about how they switch around positions on the O line. And then ultimately the biggest piece is the quarterback piece. The culture of the team is led by a quarterback. And I know there's certain people on this podcast that don't really like Diego Pavia, appreciate his antics and whatnot. And you could consider me in that group as well, some of the things he's done. But I do one thing I love about him is how he plays with an unyielding confidence in his ability and his team's ability to win games. And I think that's instilled in him by Clark Lee. And I think the way you just look at how he's rebuilt that Vandy program, and it was a it's that's a program that's been in the dumps of the SEC for a long time, and it isn't as well resourced as a lot of the SEC schools. Don't have a pedigree of being able to recruit in the way that a lot of SEC schools have been able to. And if you put a guy like Clark Lee, who's been able to recruit at a high level and build up a program at a high level in a really, really tough conference, and you put him at a place like Michigan that's as well resourced as it is, and one of the blue bloods that gets talked about as spanning the entire history of college football. It's one of the premier programs in college football. If you put him at the helm of a job like that, I think it would be very intriguing to see what he's able to do with those resources that he'd be able to tap into at Michigan. It's something I think is a good fit for them with how he builds culture, and then a good fit for Clark Lee in that he gets to go to a program that is the cream of the crop in college football and really see what he's made of, and if he's able to take it to another level that he most likely isn't going to be able to reach at Vandy, if he can take it to another level at a school like Michigan. So Clark Lee being the head coach of Michigan is very intriguing to me, and it is something I'd definitely like to see.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tuska. And obviously, like you said, the buyout or the contract extension would be an issue for Vandy and Michigan. But I also think, if, especially for a school like Michigan with basically unlimited resources, that buyout shouldn't be an issue, especially since they're saving money on what would have been a Sherrone Moore buyout. And I really like what you said because I feel like he's not really being talked about in this coaching search. You heard a lot of DeBoer, and you're hearing a lot of Kenny Dillingham with a little bit of Jed Fish as well. But I I also think like, yeah, Clark Lee's a Vandy guy, but when a job like this comes across, like it's really hard to say no. And him understanding what is likely to be the ceiling of Vandy football and kind of how like you go 10-2, and maybe if you had a different logo, like you're in the playoff, but that's not the case for them. Versus at Michigan, and with their resources and his ability to build a culture, he can really establish himself as one of the premier coaches and give himself a chance to win a national championship year in and year out. So yeah, definitely something to look at too. And just on the Shrums Moore situation, like there's not all that much to it other than just a really sad situation for a guy who had a really positive public perception of him after he led Michigan when Harbaugh was suspended back in 2022 or 2023, whatever that was. And him crying after the games, just a Michigan guy. He bled Michigan, and it's just really sad to see his reputation and honestly what probably could be the end of his coaching career based off of a really bad decision.
Yeah, I had some just comments, not really on because I think I'd voice my opinions, but I think Sherrone Moore is a coach. But I wanted to kind of say that, like, when you're doing a coaching search after like one ends like this, I feel like a smart coach is going to take this job, has to take everything into account. We talked about the same thing with like Kiffin to LSU and like the state of the LSU athletic department, the state of LSU as a university. I think the same as we done with Michigan. With Ward Manuel there, they've had a lot of really bad things happen in the sense of like college athletics kind of touched and done a lot of things that they turn like blind eyes to, that like he's now on the hot seat. So when you have an AD on the hot seat, and then there's rumors that they knew about this way before, they were just waiting to see what happened with like the end of the Michigan season. Like, I don't know. I think that it's I think that it's just another thing that you're gonna have to like a coach is gonna take into consideration. And I think like y'all were talking about, Clark Lee's a great coach. He's a program builder. He's kind of I think he's more proven as a program builder than one name we were talking about off air with Jed Fish because of the way that Clark Lee has done it in a much tougher conference, I would say. But I don't know if Michigan. I think Michigan has so many good options ahead of them that I don't know if they can. It's going to be really hard for them to screw this up. So I think that no matter, I think it's good that they've like waited this long into the cycle where they don't have to get involved with the whole Kiffin sweepstakes or things like that. They can just like find their guy and kind of work that way. So yeah, but that's my thoughts. I don't know. I think Michigan kind of did a bad job of this whole thing as an athletic department, like usual, but they
But
can still save some face.
just like to play devil's advocate, isn't it a little bit nice that this happens all after signing day and this happens after the season, or at least the regular season? Don't you think that might have been strategic?
Oh, for them to release or for them, yeah, like that's my thing. They knew about this. They were just waiting, which just shows further corruption in the athletic department, in my opinion. They were waiting to see if they beat Michigan or if they beat Ohio State for the fifth straight year, and if they did, then Sherrone Moore, they would have fired the staffer, made her sign an NDA, but gave her like a lot of money. Instead, he's fired, in jail, probably going to be there for a while.
I don't disagree with you, Arch. I just want to draw a quick parallel between, or not, it's not a parallel, it's a comparison between Michigan and Penn State. And I think Arch made a really good point in that Michigan's going to have their selection and they're going to be able to go poach a coach from a program that isn't as well renowned or resourced as them.
Yeah, Penn State
And
thought they were going to be what Michigan
it's a
is.
very, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Penn State, they're the type of program that you see that thinks they're at the level of a Michigan and is a program that could go and get like a Mike Elko from Texas A&M or a Signetti from Indiana. And they're the type of program that agents use to leverage the program that the coach they're representing is at so that they can get an extension and get paid more money. Michigan is the type of program where,
You leave for the job.
yeah, you leave for that job. And I just think it's a funny comparison between the two and all the drama related to the Penn State coaching search and how mishandled and misguided that was and how Michigan's basically, I think we all agree Michigan's basically going to have their selection of not every single coach in the country, but they're going to have a pretty long list of guys that they can poach, and it's probably going to end up going well for them. And
If
also,
you had to,
I want to see Michigan take a swing as well, and hire someone exciting, because clearly Sherrone Moore was probably the right option to turn to once
Please, not
Harbaugh
Brian
left.
Kelly. Not Brian
But
Kelly.
but go get a coach
Bring it
that
home.
is gonna ignite the fan base and be able to and be able to get Michigan back in the place it needs to be and in the right direction.
if you had to place a wager right now on who the next Michigan coach would be, who would you pick?
Clark Lee.
I think it's tough.
I'm going to say Kalen DeBoer.
I'm leaning towards DeBoer as well. I think that there's going to be serious considerations if Alabama loses to Oklahoma, and there's a pretty decent chance of that happening. So,
So you
but I would
think
love Clark
but
Lee would be my
But then,
favorite
but
so
absolute slam dunk.
you think the statement that Kalen DeBoer put out saying like me and my family love Tuscaloosa and I'm not going anywhere, you think that was just horseshit?
I don't think it would be his decision.
You
yeah, I think
think
they would.
Bama's gonna
saying-
fire
I
him?
think it, yeah, like I think it would be like,
Why
yeah,
would you
cool,
do
you
that if
loved
you're
it.
Alabama? What better coaches on the market are there than Kalen DeBoer?
Dan Lanning. Well, debatable if
Okay,
he's better because
He's never beat
kept
him.
him in a locker. Yeah, that's debatable actually.
Dude, you'd have to have
I get that sentiment though, Arch. I think
what?
Dan Lanning is looked more fondly upon than DeBoer.
Yeah,
Okay, but
especially in the eyes of Alabama
Yeah.
booster. Like it would be more of a Saban move.
okay, but they better have that thing signed and sealed before they fire DeBoer. Because if they don't, if they can't, if like at the last minute Lanning's like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna stay in Eugene, Oregon. Like,
I
then
think
who are
he
you
would
hiring?
stay.
I
Hmm?
also the thing about Lanning is that if there's any coach that
Why
says
go to
that they're going to
Alabama?
stay in a certain spot, I think it's Lanning at Oregon. He always says, I watch like all the Oregon football content. He always says the grass is real green in Oregon.
Well,
Also,
and like
It would
you
take a
have to
lot to get
also
him out of
think
there.
if you're Dan Lanning, like you just saw how they treat DeBoer, who goes
Yeah.
9-3 and 10-3, loses a playoff game on the road in a pick'em game, and then they fire him. So then you go to Alabama and you're like, all right, here you have a 2-year window versus Oregon. He's now made the playoffs 2 years in a row, has made the quarterfinals, most likely, unless they lose to JMU 2 years in a row. And he has completely turned that program into a national competitor where where there's no 2-year window for him. If they go 9-3 next year and don't make the playoff, and then 9-3 the year after that, like he's still going to be at Oregon. So I don't know why. Like I understand that would be a good hire for Bama, and I don't know if he would necessarily go, knowing
dude,
that
you
you have
literally
two
get to play
years.
Rutgers and Nebraska and Maryland every year. Like, why? I don't know. And
Oregon also
and
might
you have
be
the West Coast
more
talent.
Oregon might be more well resourced than Alabama at this point.
Uh,
And in the future, going into the more rev share based payment style and era of college football.
I think firing Kalen DeBoer is crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I don't. I think it would. I do agree. I think it would be crazy, but I also could like genuinely see
it could easily happen.
I
I
could
think
also see
that's ludicrous.
Minter coming back to Michigan.
Jesse Minter was a name on the hot board that I was very intrigued by.
Yeah, I
Very
could see
intrigued.
that.
Where's he at now? The Ravens.
He's the defensive coordinator
Chargers.
at the Chargers.
Mm,
McDonald is the one at the Seahawks. He's the head coach. He was
yeah,
not the Ravens, but
Georgia
yeah,
guy.
yeah. So Minter, I could see that. But Minter, you're taking a flyer because like he's never even had a head coaching job before.
That would be a hire that I considered uninspiring, in my opinion. It would just be a safe one, and safe is what got you with a coach getting arrested right after he got fired, in my opinion.
Yeah,
well,
go take a swing, Michigan.